and welcome to Her Will's Life and Leadership series. I am Naaz and I bring my background in cultural anthropology and journalism to curate the discussions for this series. On this episode, we challenge gender stereotypes in heterosexual relationships. At some point in history, women started to treat their male partners as cavemen, unfeeling, uncaring, older versions of their children. They started to believe that these men genuinely were incapable of carrying out certain duties, like looking after children, any of the household duties, or something as simple as cooking. আর জানেন তো, বিশ্বাসের একটি ভয়ঙ্কর দিক হলো মানিয়ে চলার প্রবণতা। আর আমরা যদি মেনেই নেই পুরুষ জাতির এই অক্ষমতাগুলো, তাহলে দিন বদলাবে কারা? তাই হার উইলে আমরা বলছি মানলাম না। And to prove that to you, we bring to you an incredible panel of real-life power couples who will bust every single myth that can possibly exist and you can actually imagine around gender roles in relationships or, in their cases, marriages. Now, before I introduce them to you, it is a star-studded affair tonight, let me tell you that. And if I were to list each and every achievement, it will probably take the entire duration of the show. So I shall do the next best thing, and that is provide you with an abridged version of their achievements. So this is just the very, very bare minimum, or the highlights. Now, our very first panelist tonight is Professor Dr. Zebun Nasrin Ahmed. She's a professor of architecture and has served as both the Dean of Faculty and Head of Department of Architecture, including being the acting Vice Chancellor of BUET, Dhaka, Bangladesh. But I believe her primary identity is that of a fighter. She's an incorrigible fighter. Zebun Auntie's championed every single obstacle that life's thrown her way, including cancer. And we will get to all of that very, very shortly. Our next panelist tonight is Professor Dr. Nizamuddin Ahmed. He is a currently practicing architect, a former Vice Chancellor for BGMEA's University of Fashion and Technology. He has also served as both the Dean and Head of Faculty of Architecture for BUET, Bangladesh. But I think the primary identity for Nizam Uncle is that he's a creative genius. He has been the most famous Chintito from the famous Daily Star series. He's a celebrated war hero from the 1971 Liberation War of Bangladesh. He's a scout leader of a Silver Tiger renown, and a Rotarian, Zebun Nasrin's husband, and Her Will's very first he for she. And together, this power couple will bring alive their stories from Dhaka of the 1970s. Moving along, our next panelist is a bit of a Wonder Woman, and she is none other than Zara Mahbub. She is the CEO of Kazi IT Center Private Limited and is the Executive Vice President and Head of Communications and Service Quality for BRAC Bank, Bangladesh. Zara Apu is a true female icon hailing from Bangladesh right now and is inspiring to a lot of us. Our fourth and final panelist tonight is Naveed Mahbub. He's a stand-up comedian and the founder of the Naveed Mahbub Comedy Club. He's also a BUET alumni, interestingly, and has worked as an engineer for Ford in the US and has served as the CEO of IBM and Nokia Siemens Network in Bangladesh. Naveed Pai is not only a stand-up comedian, but a stand-up father, and more importantly, a stand-up husband to Zara Mahbub, and is also Her Will's very first he for she. I can't wait to get started and introduce you to this incredible panel tonight. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Her Wheels Life and Leadership series. I hope all of you are looking very well on Friday. And thank you so much. I'm so very grateful for each and every one of you joining and taking this time out of your, what I actually personally know to be an incredibly busy and challenging schedule. আমি প্রথমেই একটু বলে নিতে চাই যে ইউজুয়ালি আমি একটা সার্টেন লেভেল অফ ফর্মালিটি এক্সারসাইজ করে থাকি ইন রানিং এন্ড হোস্টিং দিস শো, কিন্তু আজকে না। I want to shred all of that because I really want to get to the heart of this issue. কেননা আমরা যদি দেখি এখন অ্যাটলিস্ট 2020-তে আমরা যে সিচুয়েশনে আছি, বাসার বাইরে কর্মক্ষেত্রে, অফিসে, in the corporate sector, globally, even including the parliament, এখন there is an increasing focus on gender equality, equal pay. এই conversations গুলো বেশ up and coming. কিন্তু আমরা যদি বাসার ভেতরে দেখি, especially from a in a South Asian context, যদি আমরা চিন্তা করি, I personally feel, I'll find out what each of you think in a little while, but I personally see that the progress actually hasn't been as expanding as in the other sectors. And that is a bit of a concern. Jekano, a progress is stagnant. And that's basically what I really want to, drive at and find out about today. But let me start by asking Zarapu, how are you feeling? I have to give you this disclaimer that when I planned to feature all the four of you together, I definitely did not realize that I was pinning you against 3 Buet alumni. What I planned for was the Ahmeds versus the Mahboobs, but what ended up happening is Buet versus Zara Mahboob. So, apnar anubhuti. Please.
Thank you so much, Naaz. Assalamu alaikum, and it's wonderful to be here. আসলে আমার লাইফটাই হয়ে গেছে বুয়েট ভার্সেস জারা মাহবুব, বিকজ আমার হাজবেন্ডের ফ্রেন্ডস, ফ্যামিলি মেম্বার্স, তারপরে আজকে যেমন you put me up not only against বুয়েট ভার্সেস জারা মাহবুব, you put me up, it's pretty much the in-laws. Afa has known Naveed since I was a little baby, so she's my nonash in essence, and Bhaiya is my dula bhai. So we've got I've got family members with me here. So
that's amazing.
They're very welcoming and they're very forgiving towards a non-right.
That's amazing. So a bit of a reunion happening here. Naveed Bhai, welcome to the show. Thank you, Zarapu, and welcome to the show as well. Naveed Bhai, apnar, without giving your age away, of course, which years were you affiliated with Buet?
Bueter affiliation is actually a moving target. কারণ আমরা আমাদের 4 বছরের কোর্স শেষ করতে 7 বছর লেগেছিল। হ্যাঁ, আমি যখন পাস করে বের হয়ে আমি বিয়ে করলাম, কবুল বললাম, আমার একটা দাঁতও খুলে পড়ে গেছিল। তো আমাদের এই জন্য বুয়েটে কবে ঢুকেছি, বের হয়েছি, ইটস ভেরি ফ্লুইড আর কি। তো এমনি আমাদের এইচএসসি, যেটা আমাদের হাই স্কুল বলে এখানে, ওটা আমি 1985 সালে পাস করেছি। আর আমি বুয়েটে ঢুকেছি, আমরা ক্লাস শুরু করি 87 সালে। তো 1.5 বছর বসেছিলাম সেশন জ্যামের জন্য, আর আমরা বেরিয়েছি 92 সালে।
Of course, session jam, that can be quite an interesting thing. Assalamu alaikum to both of you. Nizam uncle, welcome to the show. আপনারও তো বেশ দীর্ঘ একটা সময় বুয়েটের সঙ্গে associated. তো আপনার what period of the years are we talking about?
Assalamu alaikum everybody. আমাদের ব্যাচ ক্লাস শুরু করে 20th March 1974. And unlike Naveed Mahboob, we were magical, although he should be the one who would be magical. We had no session jam. We completed our 5-year course in 1 month, less than 5 years. And the primary reason was that in 75, there was a brutal killing of Bangabandhu and his family. And when Zia Rahman became president, student politics was banned in universities. So we enjoyed the politics-free university life. So we passed out in February 1979. That's 1 month less than 5 years. That's the record.
Oh, wow. That surely is. Huh? Certainly. Thank you for being with us. Zebun Aunty, your affiliation is an ongoing one, I suppose.
Yes,
Actively, very
there.
actively so.
Firstly, thank you for having me on this show. And yes, I've been with Buet since 1975. And then, well, there was a period when I wasn't there because they didn't accept me as a teacher. So it was, you know, a difficult time for me. But I joined again 7 years after I finished my, you know, my studies at Buet.
Right,
And
as
then
a student.
Yeah, as a student. And then I joined in 88 as a teacher. So I finished in 81, joined in 88, and since then I've been teaching. I still am.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much. Actually, I do kind of want to go back to what you mentioned about that little brief period when you were not there. Not so much in terms of the institution, kintu I know that you've talked about the journey of persistence, you know, coming into the leadership roles that you currently occupy. আমি just একটু পেছনের দিকে চলে যেতে চাচ্ছি back in the days, and I want you to take us back to those moments of rejection. I suppose that's what you were referring to, that you felt were based solely on your gender, and what was going through your mind at that time. Basically, I'm just trying to extract that, and particularly what fueled you the will to come back and try again and again and again.
Actually, it was a very difficult time. I had done very well in my, you know, my exams. I passed. I was second in my class because I was actually, you know, again, I had been ill the year before, so I had to drop from my own class and join the next class. So I couldn't come up, you know, first. Anyway, so I was sure that I'm going to be able to teach. But when they actually had the interview, they didn't choose me. Apparently, you know, the basic reason, of course, was that they didn't want a woman there.
Right. And এটা কোন বছর ছিল?
This was in 1981. I finished my Bachelor of Architecture and I did very well. And so naturally, I went to the interview to be a teacher because I thought that that would be the best thing for me to do. Unfortunately, they didn't choose me. They chose somebody with a worse result than me, which is a bit surprising for Buet. But at that time, there were very few women, and they had it at the back of their minds that maybe a woman won't be such a good teacher. Maybe they thought that the men won't, you know, most of the students were men, so they probably thought that the men won't be able to respond properly or
a boys' club situation.
Exactly. So who's going to listen to her and all that? In fact, you know, the interviewer even told me, your interview was very good. And I thought that, okay, so my interview was good, but I wasn't chosen. So what does it matter? And it happened again in the next year. So this was twice. And then luckily for me, I went abroad and did my master's with my husband. My husband did his PhD. I did my MPhil, which is a higher degree than the master's. Came back, and again, I was rejected. So this was an ongoing thing. And they actually felt that, you know, Nizam is a teacher there. If his wife comes in, it might not be such a good idea. They might have their marital conflict in the, you know, the university. They actually told me all these things. And so it was so unfortunate. But luckily for me, in 1988, one of my teachers who is not so biased about women, he said, why aren't you applying? I said, there is no use my applying. Then he said, no, you come. I'm now the head of the department. You got a fantastic result. Why wouldn't you come? And so I went again. This was my fourth interview. And you know, finally, I got it. And since then, I realized how wonderful it is. You know, teaching is the best thing. And luckily for me, I managed to, you know, supersede all the people who were, you know, you were chosen instead of me. So
that's right, because you later were actually, it was on request that you became the acting vice chancellor.
Yes, exactly. The government later said that take over when, you know, our actual Vice Chancellor died, and they appointed me as the acting Vice Chancellor by actual order, a government order. So
Right.
yes, and I felt that actually, you know, was
That's
sort
a
of
substantial change.
Yes, substantial
A
change in the way
fundamental
people
shift.
look. Yes, and this was in 2016. So
Right.
this was much, much later, and the
Of
gender
course.
issue, you know, had been superseded. I would say that a lot of us teachers who were taken later were women, because women did very well, and there was no stopping them. And so these girls, these ladies, they actually proved to all these men who were, you know, judging us before that yeah, these people are capable. In fact, they're sometimes more capable than the guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you. And yeah, exactly. We can't really judge the organization and the institutes at the time, because we have to bear in mind 80s are, you know, the cultural understanding that used to exist. So absolutely, I get it. Zarapu, I actually want to go to you next, because very similarly, I know that right after having your first child, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were in a new city and a new country, and taking a break perhaps would have been like a naturally accepted course of action for anyone, but not for you. And I'll tell you why I'm raising this is because invariably we hear from our members on the group that after becoming a mom, I decided to take a break and focus on motherhood. It's a very, very common narrative that comes out of even the most ambitious of women that I even personally know. Motherhood money at a pause. Motherhood money, I need to leave everything that existed to my individual life before and then start afresh or stop altogether. So I just want to find out and really capture what made you think differently.
What made me think differently is sitting right here in the Zoom panel along with everyone else. Navid Mahbub made me think differently. So I say it in front, alhamdulillah, I say it in front of him and I say it in front of everybody. I mean, even during our fights and arguments, I say, Navid, that is a subject not for discussion, because you're the one who's brought me wherever I am with the push that you've given me. So what I did when I had my firstborn was I paused work. I actually did pause work, but we went on a more challenging journey. We were living in San Diego, and with the 4.5-month-old child, Naveed and I would fly up to Oakland, drive up to Berkeley. The child would be with the babysitter for 9 hours, and then we'd do our classes, then pick the baby back up, fly back to San Diego. So we did that for a quarter. And when Naveed realized that it was getting a little insane, and the baby was thinking that we're maybe working in the airline industry. So that was becoming normal for the baby. So Naveed said, you know what, let's not do that. Let me pause. You continue with your MBA. I have a master's already, and I will also pursue stand-up comedy on the weekends. So Naveed enabled me and sort of to fly off, literally to fly off into class for 2.5 years, and he took care of the baby at that time. But yeah, we didn't pause as far as being busy, but I did pause from work because it was getting a little too hectic. Flying and doing an MBA and raising a little baby on the weekdays.
It sounds almost not human, but I don't believe I honestly believe my panel tonight is made up of superhuman all around. Yeah, that's an incredible story, and we will come back to a few of the points that you mentioned, Zarapu. But আমি just চলে যেতে চাই Nizam uncle to you, because the discussion I want to have with you has multiple layers of importance, I believe. আর এটার গুরুত্বটা একটু demonstrate করার জন্য I want to share a personal story with you. Now, I personally started working when I was very young, at 16. I think in a Bangladeshi context, especially as a girl, it's definitely very, very early. Anywhere, it's quite early. But working part-time, I was really proud of the work that I was doing, I suppose, and the fact that somebody thought that I was worth being paid to do something that I was good at as well. Now, at a party, an uncle, while asking me about what I was up to, looked at my dad upon hearing that I was working already and said with this very disturbing smile on his face, "Oh, tomar ar ki chinta? Meke diyei to income korai nichcho." And I remember that look on my father's face, obviously not a very pleasant one, you know. Now, I want to ask you, as a husband of a strong female leader, and later on as a father of a girl child yourself, how do you hold your ground and how do you do it so comfortably?
Well, like even yesterday, I was moderating a Zoom reunion of my cadet college, Jinaza Cadet College friends. And I was asking them to introduce their family. So this guy says that I did this, and I have a son who does this, I have a daughter who does this. And I asked him, did they fall from the sky? Where's your wife? Oh yeah. Then he got my point, and he introduced his wife. And another gentleman said, "Amar wife onek kaজ করতো এখন কিছু করে না," and he's presently a vice chancellor. I said, "Excuse me, আপনি বললেন কিছু করে না মানে বাসা কাজ করে এটা না?" So then he also realized that কিছু করে. So I think naturally I have been a supporter of women, and I used to tell in my class that if anybody in my class at Duet, that তোমাদের যদি কেউ জোর করে বিয়ে দেয় আমাকে এসে বলবা. This is one thing I really hate. Forced marriage. I can't imagine somebody having to live with somebody whom you don't approve of or whom you don't like, and all these things. So I think intrinsically I've been a feminist, if I may say so.
That is amazing to hear from somebody of your generation. Sorry, I could not help myself, but yeah. Sorry, please continue.
And,
you had something else to add.
I'm the doctor support the odd day. You know that I'm very good in changing nappies. I'm very good in cooking.
You absolutely are, because not just an amazing husband, an amazing grandfather as well, hands-on.
So, and I'll just finish by saying how good a cook I am. When my mother-in-law died, expired very suddenly, a very sad moment for us, because my mother and my mother-in-law, they left for the heavenly abodes within 3 days of each other. So my mother went first, and 3 days later, Ditti's mother went. So it was a very, very traumatic moment, period for us. So there was a dua for my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law said that a dua khabarta ranna korbe nizam. I cooked for the guests of that dua. So you can imagine I am a very authorized cook from my father-in-law.
Definitely, yes. And certificate given by all the family members. So amazing. No, thank you so much. And I will come back and touch upon some of the points you raised as well. But Navid bhai, just apnar kache chole jete chacchi, and I have to say that I am a fan of not just your work, but just how you live your life. I think I'm just as big of a fan of that. And I have an immense amount of respect for how you stand up for your partner, how you dedicate your time with your children, or your holiday trips with your little girl. But, you know, I have to say, sadly, not just in Bangladesh, but globally, you are an outlier. An out and out outlier, if I may say that. Like, besides you and probably Clark Gaylord, who's Jacinda Ardern's partner, I don't know very many other men who would actually do the same thing that you're able to do. That kind of sacrifice that Zarapu said, "Oh, I already have a master's, now it's your turn." That sort of thing, I hope you know that kind of unique positioning that you hold in that manner. I want to ask you, was there ever a time that you actually questioned your own intention and thinking? And if so, how did you manage to stay on course? Or if not, how did you do it
So
anyway?
first of all, it was nothing is a sacrifice. That's one word we don't, Zara and I don't have in our vocabulary, because if it's ever a sacrifice, that word's going to come up some point or the other. Hey, you know what, I did this for you, and why did I do it for you? So that was never there. In our case, what happened was that there was never any pressure on one on the other to do anything. For example, if we were married for 7 years, we didn't have kids, and Zara was always ready for a kid. I never wanted to have a kid because I was so ambitious in my career. We were traveling, backpacking, living the life. And my whole definition was that if you have a child, I think everything's going to change. And the good thing about Zara is that she never pressured me. She said, you know what, I was born to have a child, but if you don't want to have a child, I love you so much that I'm willing to accept that. And then we had a cat, and then I was so obsessed with the cat. And I said that, Zara, if a cat gives this much joy, what about a child? I couldn't even finish my sentence. She said, okay, honey, you're ready. And then we have a kid. And then in 1 year, we have a daughter. And I was so obsessed with my daughter that when we were both going to Berkeley for our MBA after one semester, I gladly said that, you know what, I don't need it. So it was not a question of saying I'm going to sacrifice a Berkeley MBA. It was a very conscious decision on my part. And I told myself that I was working at Qualcomm as an engineer at that time. I was making decent money. And I said, I really don't want it. I would rather spend that time with my daughter. So those 3 years, believe it or not, what happened, my daughter turned 1. Zara was just about maybe 20% done through her MBA. And this was the 2007, 5-6 time frame. Remember, there was a housing boom in the US. And if you had a pulse, you could get a mortgage. So what we did was that we invested in a lot of real estate. And, that's time you could flip properties. We made a decent amount of money. And the day my daughter turned 1, I had already quit Berkeley by that time. And the day she turned 1, it was a Saturday. We'd had her birthday. On Monday, I went and quit my 6-figure job at Qualcomm. And I said, I'm going to stay home. And it was a conscious decision to do it, not a sacrifice, because I wanted to do it. So she went to Berkeley, and 3 years I was home. I was just doing comedy, and I was a stay-home dad. And in the US, when you're a stay-home dad, you're doing everything. My daughter, I go to the bathroom, she's with me, that kind of a thing. And it was something I wanted to do. So the sacrifice was never there. In fact, I was fortunate enough to have been able to do that. We had some cash in hand. Zara was going to Berkeley. And then I had this great experience to do what I did. And then, of course, later on, I got back into the work stream in Bangladesh. I was the CEO of IBM. I was CEO of Nokia Networks. And again, when we had our second daughter, I quit my job again. So and it was again not because that it was a sacrifice. It was something I wanted to do. Who would want to quit a high-paying CEO job? But I said I wanted to do. I can always be a CEO tomorrow, but I will never be able to see my daughter the way I can see her today. And so, and I can give you many such examples. And so it was never, the word sacrifice was never there. It was actually a selfish act that I was fortunate enough to be home and be with my kids, where Zara, she was out doing a job. And even then, Zara's definition was, no, it's not a sacrifice. I actually want to go out, because she's very much an extrovert. I call myself the gregarious introvert. I seem very much of an extrovert, but I actually like to be home. Six months I've been home. And guess what? I'm not in any hurry to go out. I just enjoyed the life because I'm with my kids. So bottom line is that the word sacrifice is not there. The word is that it's been a conscious, voluntary decision, and it was a fun decision. So therefore, it was never an issue that there was never a regret, rather that I've been fortunate to do what I'm doing, and Zara's fortunate to do what we're doing. And alhamdulillah, it's worked out as a very complementary arrangement.
Very, very lucky and amazing. I am getting my mind blown with the stories I'm hearing tonight, honestly. Zebul Aunty, I just want to come back to you, that you and Anku, as we understand, interestingly have walked a very, very similar career path including the educational background as it developed. So including same institutions that you studied in and then later on worked in as well. Very similar posts as well. In my introduction, I guess I said, both of you served as the dean, both of you were head of the department. So it's very interesting in that way. I just want to ask you, did you view your relationship and later marriage as an equal partnership through it all?
When I got married, I was a student of Buet. Okay.
Right.
I also had children being a student. So it was a very difficult time. I have to say that had I not had the support of my in-laws and Nizam, of course, definitely, it would not have been possible. You know, I always think of how different the attitudes of people like me at that time and people even say 10, 15 years on, say people who grew up in the mid-90s are. Because one day I was, talking about these things and my colleagues expressed that, I said that I was so lucky that, my in-laws allowed me to study, and finish my education. And then I was able to go, I used to have to go to England. I studied while my master's and PhD, master's in England when Nizam was there, but PhD all on my own. I used to go to England, come back, go back, come back, for supervision and work and things, and come back because I was working and my family was here. But my in-laws were perfectly fine with it. Nizam was very supportive. And, I was telling my colleagues about this. I said how lucky I was. They said, what do you mean you were lucky? They were lucky to have you. That is their attitude. You see that there's a difference in the way I thought. I still think that I was so content with my life. I'm so, I feel that I have had all the luck in my life. And people 15 years onwards, and they think that, what are you saying? What is it their prerogative to give you permission? You deserve the permission, so you got it. So there's a difference in the attitude of people. And when you have that attitude, it's always a competitive sort of thing. And my and Nizam's life has never been competitive. We've always been, talking about how we're going to do things together and sort of agreeing to things. And if we see that one of us, even if I don't agree, Nizam sort of backs away. Like recently, he was the Vice Chancellor and of BGMEA. And, it was difficult for him. I was also, I was ill and he had to travel to and from his work and he had to be on the road so long. And voluntarily he said that, look, I'm spending so much time away from you at this time. So I think that it's not a good idea for me to continue. And he gave it up. So there are these sorts of things that, he sort of thinks about what I'm thinking and acts on it. And these sorts of things are...
It's amazing.
Yes, and so
it's amazing. You compliment.
Yes, the attitudes of this couple is different from, say, a couple which is always competing with each other. I want to be the supreme. I want to be
Alpha.
In charge. I want to show this. It's different.
It's amazing. I loved how you put that in, that it's not competitive, or it should more be complementing each other and helping each other and backing away when required. That's actually, that's quite an interesting.
If you give me 1 minute, I'd like to talk about my parents. My father
absolutely.
My father, they grew up, they got married in the 1950s, okay? Mm-hmm. So, and then I've seen them since the 60s. Of course, I can't remember them when I was 2 or 3 years old. But in the 60s, I remember them from mid-16s onwards. My father was, his word was the law. He was so dominating. And I think that this was the typical picture of any married couple at that time. My mother was quiet and, always supportive of us and doing whatever we say, waiting for us to do this, waiting for us, giving up all the good things in life for us and for the husband. So we thought that he was the dominating person. But when I think back now, I think my father came from a background, you know, they talked in colloquial Bangla, and my father was probably the first of the educated people of that family. They were well off, but in terms of education, they were not so good.
Yeah.
But my mother came from a very educated family, and she had, you know, beautiful Bangla. She came from India, so she spoke beautifully. She was very well educated in that sense. All her education was after she got married, of course, but still. And my father never spoke colloquial Bangla at all. So he changed his whole personality based on my mother. So who was the dominating person? Tell me. I mean, you might think
or who had
quiet,
more influence,
you know, introverted sort of person.
Yeah.
But actually, it's my mother who made the choice, and my father changed his whole lifestyle because of her. So, you know, that shows that you don't actually have to show that you're dominating or, you know, call the tune, but you can still be the person who's the most important thing.
Strength comes in many forms.
Yes.
There's a quiet strength as well
Exactly.
in that. Yeah, no, that's a very beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Zebunanti. Zara Apu, I just want to ask you, I want to start off with something that I personally find very unique about your approach towards life. Now, most success stories, you know, in popular literature, when we hear them, it always begins with, I have a dream, and then continues from there. But your story is different in it that more often than not, you grappled with whatever life threw at you at a given point of time, and you know, did magic with it and turned that into your passion. And I want to quote you from one of your interviews. I remember you said that passion can't be preordained. You said that if you can learn to love someone in an arranged marriage, you can learn to love what you have. I found that a beautiful thing to say. And I want to just ask you, is that your overall motto in life and approach?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because thank you so much, Naaz. I'm totally blown away with all the stories I'm listening to. I even listen to Naveed and all, because he speaks every time there's something new comes up. So I must say, I actually do believe that everything is preordained. So whatever's thrown your way, you just grab it and run with it. And running is what I think is the most important thing in life. I mean, accepting it and going forward. So because Naveed, poor Naveed, I liked him in 1987 when I was 12 years old. He had no clue. And then he saw me in 1998 and he said, oh my God, you've grown up. And I said, oh my God, no one's married you yet. Do you want to marry me? And he was like, oh my God, what is this? And then told his mom, and the whole family was like, oh my God, Zara, please, Naveed Naveed, his cousins, everybody forced him. And the poor man got stuck with me. So he's learned to love me. I've had a crush on him. And yes, so the thing is, everything is preordained. I mean, but us putting the effort is where it changes how we look at life, how we accept things. As Appa was saying, I'm indebted to my in-laws for accepting me in my lunatic way. They've accepted me exactly how I am. They've not asked to change me one bit. So they love me like I am their child. So they love me to bits. My senior, my brother-in-law, I'm their family. Nobody's ever said I'm an in-law. So it's very important to have these people around you. I mean, আমার নিজের family কথা বলছি না, because they are supposed to help me, right? They're supposed to support me.
Yeah.
That is what is we take for granted. I know there are a lot of people যাদের নিজেদের family support দেয় না, unfortunately. But আমি আলহামদুলিল্লাহ I've been blessed because আমি যাই করতে চেয়েছি না কেন, হাজবেন্ড তো আছেনই, আমার শ্বশুর শাশুড়ি, আমার নিজের পরিবার, আমার এক্সটেন্ডেড ফ্যামিলি মেম্বারসরা আমার সাপোর্ট সার্কেল হিসেবে কাজ করেন। এই যে এই জুম সেশনটার মধ্যে কিন্তু সারা দুপুর নানা দাদা দাদির কাছে ছিল, এখন the kids have been packed and loaded off to Nana Nani's house. So we are very blessed to have that around us as well. So as Dityapa was saying, it is a big blessing to have this force around us that supports us in whatever we do.
Absolutely. No. Support system is actually what makes each and every one of us. I could not agree with you more.
And it's up to us to build it. So এটাও আমি মনে করি if they love me, I have to love them back, so they know what I'm here to do and what I want to do. I have to market that as well.
Respect given is returned in almost all cases. I totally agree with you. Nizam uncle, আমি একটা জিনিস বলতে চাই যে, in a Bangladeshi বা South Asian context, a male leader does not traditionally emanate the egalitarian ideologies of gender equality that you definitely represent. You probably very intrinsically represent. Please take us back to your impressionable years. আপনার বেড়ে ওঠার ওই সময়টা স্কুল হতে পারে, কলেজ হতে পারে, and help us understand how you navigated your way. কোনো ধরনের peer pressure কি ছিল, good or bad, to act in a certain, alpha male kind of a manner, যেটা I believe ওই সময়কার ওই generation, it was popular to be, kind of aggressive in certain situations. I just want to understand the challenges that you faced in your era, or if you didn't, what were the support factors?
Well, despite my being a good friend to my wife and my female colleagues, I spent 17 years in different boys' hostels. So I almost never studied from home. I went to Our Lady of Fatima Convent School in Kumilla, as a hostel in KG2, and when we used to wet our beds, not necessarily me, but my friends, and they'll tell about me. And then I went to residential model school, Mohammadpur. Then I went to Janada Cadet College. Then I went to Buet. So all this time, except for my PhD and my postdoctorate, these 2 years, I've been studying from a hostel. So I've been surrounded by boys. So I think this love for a mother, love for a sister, love for a wife, this somehow has to be God gifted, and it has to be divinely communicated to you. I mean, it really, some of us who do not behave well with women, I think it's just their problem. I mean, it's nothing to do, I think, with some says their background, it's their society, community. Most of my friends, I would give them 8 out of 10 for their behavior with their wife.
That's amazing. That's a big thing. Yeah.
I would give. So I would like to see. So I think it really depends upon the person concerned, and the person who is destined to be a stupid man. And so some of us can change if he comes across a good woman as a wife, his mother can guide him, or he has a friend who can tell him to বা দেখে দেখে শিখলো। কিন্তু জিনিসটা হলো আমি মনে করি যে এটা কোনো ট্রেনিং এর ব্যাপারটা না। আমার যে ফর এক্সাম্পল আমার কোনো ট্রেনিংই নাই, আমি বললাম I spent all my life in boys hostel, so I have
That's right.
I've nothing to do with girls. না আমার কোনো স্পিচ শুনেছি না আমি, আর I'm not a very good reader. I know I've read seriously speaking, I've read maybe 5 or 6 novels in my life. I don't read. I almost do not. I read magazines, small scripts, খবরের কাগজ পড়ে অনেক বেশি। তো আমি মনে হয় না যে কোনো জায়গা থেকে আমার ওরকম কোনো শিক্ষা আসছে যে আপনার কিন্তু মহিলাদের প্রতি ভালো ব্যবহার করা উচিত, এটা আমার কোনো শিক্ষা নাই। এটা আমি দীক্ষিত হয়ে গেছি মানে ন্যাচারালি। একটা জিনিস শিখতে পারি from couples who travel a long time together, that there is a need to be tolerant, there is a need to understand, there is a need to support each other, there is a need to carry on when the other is falling down, to give your hand. তুমি তো বিয়ে যখন করেছো, so as the English say, till death do us apart. So when you say that, please do mean it. Don't say it as a sentence or few words. So আমার মনে হয় অনেক কঠিন জিনিস, অত সহজে বোঝানো যাবে না, কিন্তু টলারেন্সটা অনেক গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটা সম্পর্ক।
এবং কিছু কমন রুলস অফ এনগেজমেন্ট যেগুলো আপনি তুলে আনলেন, আই থিঙ্ক দোজ আর ইম্পর্টেন্ট। দ্য মিউচুয়াল রেসপেক্ট দ্যাট ইউ মেনশন উইথ ইয়োর some of your ex-family members. There's never, I don't think there's ever ground to lose common decency, basic respect, and love that everyone has for each other on a very, basic human level. So oi jinishgula triumphs every other conflict and issues that people may have with each other. So that's quite a nice insight into that. Thank you. Nizam Uncle, Navid Bhai, similarly, I just want to know your experience as well. Apnar bere othar shomoyer, any factors you want to put out there, you want to mention that helped you think either outside the box or helped you view gender roles more favorably or differently?
I think definitely when you're growing up during your impressionable years, those who are around you, your influencers, do make a difference. And like Nizam Bhai, I've been in a all-male institution pretty much all through my life. So from grade 3 to grade 12 was all boys, and then I was in Buet, which was almost all boys, unfortunately. So, and then when for my master's in engineering, and even in the US, it was almost all boys. So I would say, like, my mother, she's very, very accomplished. She's a professor at Dhaka University, and she's a PhD from London University. And she was very instrumental in making me understand the gender roles. And another thing was that my sister, my older sister, I'm number 2, we're known as Irish twins. We're actually exactly 11 months and 15 days apart. So many do question whether a comedian, Bangladeshi engineer turned comedian, was ever planned. So from that perspective, my sister and I, we were very close, like buddies, from as we were growing up. She's just exactly 11 months and 15 days older than I am. So I grew up as a female, as a friend at home. So we would talk about anything and everything. We had our little secrets. And of course, my mother was very much instrumental in making sure that, there was no difference. And which later on in life made me realize that there should never be a definition of a role. There's no such thing as this is a role of a man or a woman, because if you do that, you're actually typecasting things. So they helped my mom, my sister, they helped me realize. And for that matter, I really have to say both my maternal grandmothers, my mom's mother and my dad's mother, they were not that well educated, but they raised 6 children. They managed a household. Like in those days, if you really look at it, they have the street smarts of an MBA to run a family with meager means. So they also had that lot of influence on us in the family to make us realize that really these are tasks. You don't have roles. So when you say it's a role, you're typecasting things. That means, okay, this is the role of the mom, this is the role of the dad. So if the dad does what a mom is supposed to do, then people praise the dad and they kind of look down upon the mom. Hey, shame, you were supposed to do that. And vice versa. They could say, Naveed, hey, you're sitting at home, your wife is working, you should be going out making money. So now you're typecasting people. But when you say, sir, it's a task, that means it doesn't matter who does what. So if Zara's going out making the money and I'm putting the kids to bed, we're just getting the task done. So I think that was the main learning through every level of interaction with my mother, with both my maternal grandmother, and especially my sister, to this day life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. আর আপনি যে বললেন জয়েন্ট ফ্যামিলির সেই সময়কালীন যে বিউরোক্রেসি থাকতো, it almost allotted you to have political diplomacy and management skills, and definitely an equivalent of an executive MBA to an extent. And I have to agree with you. Yes, a task has no agenda. At the end of the day, yeah, we can't assign roles to task. Thank you for sharing that. I actually have a question I want to ask all four of you. It's just an interesting observation that I have. All four of you are spiritual people, spiritual beings, and I find that in my conversations with you, about everything in life, about the work, Zarapu, the way you talk about, it being a duty, like I'm not going to sit and wait for my passion to come true. Zebun Aunty as well, the way you worked through the downfalls of your life, the rejections, through the illness and that period as well. So it's that duty bound feeling that I absolutely admire in both of you as well, Nizam Uncle, through all the different roles that you've played in your career, and Navid Bhai as well, both at home and outside. So I just want to, talk about traditionally spiritual or religious people, especially in Bangladesh, if you consider it. They are automatically conservative. আমরা এটা ধরেই নেই যে রক্ষণশীল চিন্তাধারার মানুষ হবে যদি আমরা স্পিরিচুয়াল হয়ে থাকি। And anything considered, outside of the practiced norm would be blasphemous. No puns intended, but I actually want to go to you, Zebun Aunty, first and ask you, start off with you at least. Do you ever find yourself having to balance your spiritual and academic beliefs? And tell us if you ever find that religious part of you being constraining or limiting in any sort of way. In fact, I've actually heard you say that it's something that liberates you. So I just want to kind of extract that thought of yours.
Very early in life, I wanted to know what the meaning of life is. I don't know why. It just was in my mind that why am I? Why am I not, like that person who lives in the Busti? Why did I get this life, this wonderful life, actually? And, so from the beginning, I used to read a lot. Unlike Nizam, I read a lot. I read all day, any spare moment. So one of the readings I thought was because, I'm a Muslim. I was born a Muslim. There must be a reason for that. So I used to read the Quran a lot. So my spiritualism actually came from an understanding of the way God made us, the way God has given me so much, and the realization that God loves me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given me so much. And nothing in my life has been without meaning. When I've been ill, later I found out, because had I not been ill at that time, had I not had the time to reflect at that time, I wouldn't have, done or realized this much. So realization. For instance, when I was rejected for the Buet thing, so there were these 7 years that I had more time to devote to my children. God made it easy for me to, be working, not a non-working mother, let's say. I was studying, I was a student, but I didn't have to have a job. So there were less constraints on me, so I could devote more time to them. They'll give it to you.
That's amazing strength. And I know you've chronicled it elsewhere, your battle with cancer as well. I just wanted to quickly touch upon that too, of fighting it and triumphing it. And honestly, for me personally, it's one of the most inspiring stories I've been, privy to. And interestingly, you never stopped working throughout this period. Like I just want to come to that as well, that, did you work as a family, as a unit with Nizam Uncle through that as well? Because we often talk about battles that are, of a working nature, battles that are between each other in a couple. But then this was something that was standalone, your battle, your challenge. How did you and Nizam Uncle together work as a family unit in fighting this? And if so, what kind of support and encouragement did you get from Nizam Uncle in that time of crisis?
Okay, the cancer came very late. I was almost 50, almost 60. So I have lived a long life. I had lived a long life. I had my children. They were well established, married off. And so when cancer came to me, I thought that, okay, we all have to die, come on. So, I mean, and I've seen a good life, so it's okay. That's what actually made me accept it, because if it's the time for me to go to Allah, I'll go, it's okay. But what happens at that time of your life in your marriage is that, you start to tolerate each other, and, you not romantic in that sense at that
Strain, extra strain
yes, so,
on it.
so you accept each other's devotion, but you don't really express a lot. What happened with this cancer was all of a sudden, I was in this vacuum, and Nizam was there to support me. My sister helped me a lot, I have to say. Okay, yeah. My sister in England. But immediately, Nizam was there to help me. And all of a sudden, I realized the love that he has for me. So in a way, I think that when I say that everything is a blessing, my cancer was a blessing because it made me realize that this love has not died. This love is still very much alive. And my husband does feel for me. And my children are feeling for me. They're coming to my aid, and they're there for me all the time. These realizations, become so, subdued at that age. You think that, oh, you're just a cog in the wheel of everybody's life. Life goes on without you. But then you suddenly realize that everybody cares. So I think that it was amazing. And alhamdulillah, I'm cancer-free for the last year and a half. So
alhamdulillah.
That is amazing. Amazing to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know. All right. Zara Apu, I just wanted to ask you, I guess, the same question. Have you found your faith, or, do you think there is that sort of conflict between, being a spiritual person and having that sort of faith and, doing everything else that women are normally expected to do? And at the same time pursue all the dreams that you have. I know that you also went through a family crisis right after, where you left off the story about you and Navid Bhai living in the US. Shortly after that, you did return to Bangladesh. If you wanted to touch upon that and also share your views on that.
So I've grown up in a traditional joint family. In fact, with both my maternal and paternal sides in the same complex. So I've been very blessed because the joint family has taught me how to operate with that executive MBA education, as well as to love. They've showered us with love through collective upbringing, up to and thank the gratefulness bit. All of this is very, very important and very crucial, I think, in forming a person. So we're trying that with our children. Let's see how it works, inshallah.
So definitely not constraining or limiting in any sort of way.
Absolutely the opposite. It's been liberating, and it's been a guiding path, in fact. It's not.
That's amazing.
At all.
That's amazing to hear. Thank you so much, Zara Apu. Navid Bhai, I think it's kind of the same reason I'm asking you the question, is because, with some examples যেগুলো আমরা অনেক সময় শুনে থাকি, অনেক আমাদের কমেন্টস এর মধ্যেও আমরা দেখে থাকি মেম্বারসদের মধ্যে, যে ফিমেলস যারা মেম্বাররা থাকে ওরা অনেক সময় বলে যে সাধারণত, আমি এরকম একটা এক্সাম্পল দিতে পারি, আমি যে বলে যে আমি মিডিয়াতে কাজ করতে যেতাম, ইন্টারেস্টেড ছিলাম, কিন্তু আমার হাজবেন্ড অ্যালাউ করেনি। Why? On religious grounds. বা এই ধরনের, different professions. তো আমি, I guess I want to ask you first of all, যে whether you feel the same way as me, যে কোনো excuse যেটা ইউজ করা হয় to hold women back from pursuing what they want, what they're passionate about, what they believe in, cannot be a legitimate concern on any grounds, religious or not. I want to understand if that's how you think as well. And do you find it in conflict in any sort of way, being spiritual and being progressive?
No, I don't think it's in conflict. On the contrary, I think it's very much complementary. And I think religion, not just Islam, every religion is highly misunderstood. And I'm not an expert on comparative religion, but I've had Muslim, and as a student, even when I was working in the US as a single person, I've had roommates. in the US. So I've had Muslim roommates, I've had Buddhist roommate, I've had a Hindu roommate. One of my closest comedian friend who also is an engineer, is an Orthodox Jewish person. And of course, I've had friends who they just don't believe in organized religion, but there's a common denominator saying that there is this part of spirituality, which is always the last recourse. That is your basically time out in your life. 5 times when you pray, you're basically taking a time out, like in basketball. You're going and you're resetting your clock, you come back with a fresh energy. So it's not only that it's not conflicting. I don't think there is anything to say that what you need to do to sustain yourself and lead a meaningful life is something that religion prohibits. It actually encourages you to do it as long as you do it in a halal way, which is an honest way. And if you do it in an honest way, you're actually being compliant in any business environment. So it's actually, you're doing the same thing, just a different side of a coin. So therefore, I would say this is not only, it's not conflicting, it's actually very much complementary, and it can actually enhance your performance at work. So if anybody uses religion as a pretext to say that you can't do it, do something, you can't work or something, I would say that is his or her subjective interpretation to misuse a doctrine to achieve your own selfish needs.
Absolutely.
That's really my take.
Thank you so much for drawing that conclusion for it. That's perfectly fine. Zarapu, I want to ask you this. Since gender roles define korte giye je lossটা আমরা usually suffer করে থাকি, সেই lossটা কিন্তু সবার, তাই না? Entire family bears the brunt of that. আমি just জানতে চাই আপনার কাছে, if you have any words of wisdom around how women can navigate their relationships to better support their male partners. And this is like the recipe of success in your marriage, I suppose. Or do you think the onus of that responsibility entirely lies on men?
No, so it's interesting, man. There's certain places where I should say, I'll bring a little bit of comedy, man. If let's say cooking, poor Navid has had to tolerate 11 years of my cooking while in the US, and in Bangladesh he has had the relief, oh God, I don't have to tolerate the cooking anymore, because I'm not blessed with the creative skills of a very good chef. So he, on the other hand, is a great chef. Jemon Nizam Bhai bollen, Navid also, the brilliant chef. But amar jemon oi skillta nai. I would rather have Navid cook and I would sit and watch Liverpool play a game. So that's how it is in our house. But I've always been the type that is into football and cricket and climbing walls and climbing trees, and I'm that role. I'm the one who drives hundreds of miles while Navid sleeps on the passenger seat. So এটা আছে আমাদের, but এখানে gender role আমাদের partnerদেরকে we have to sell it. I mean, either we fail at it or we sell it. So আমাদেরকে ক্ষেত্রে Navid picked up because it was a matter of survival. আল্লাহ এই মহিলার কুকিং খেতে হবে না ভাই, আমি নিজে রান্না. So it's that. Or it's about, as I said initially, it's about marketing things. We have to learn to be good marketeers. If I need to do something, I need to market that willingness or that desire that I need to do this. So it's a product or a service that I have to sell and people have to buy. So আমার যেটা করার আছে, আমার partner, আমার parents, আমার in-laws, সবাইকে I have to bring them onto my side and I have to sell it to them. So I put it in very, very specific terms of a business school graduate, which I am, and that I think works. So gender role, it's about selling the role to each other.
Absolutely. And I think what you're trying to say also is that, applying that same approach that women would apply at workplaces to solve problems at work, the similar kind of attitude should be at কেন না বাসার problem গুলো the problem at the end of the day, which requires solutions. So we have to be strategic. That's very, very sound advice. Arekta interesting thing about tonight is that one of our power couples have found love via a relationship, which then turned into marriage, whilst another had their marriage arranged, Zarapu একটুখানি touched upon, and then built a relationship around that, on that institution. The love first, marriage later actually happened in our story from the 70s, while marriage first, love later happened in our story from the 90s, Dhaka. So I just want to go to you, Zebunanti, one of our leading ladies first, and ask you how common was being in love and in a relationship, first of all, within your community in Dhaka in the 70s? And also, more importantly, did your equation of respect change in any sort of way with the Nizam uncle post-marriage?
Okay. In the 70s, like in any other era, love is always there. So whether it's accepted or not is the question. Ours was an accepted love. So my family accepted Nizam. Nizam's family accepted me for about 6 years before we actually, I became the wife of the family. But in most, love marriages, this was not the thing. Most of our friends, many of them had love marriages, but these were, hidden from the family for a long, long time. And then until they just couldn't get, and now they're getting them married to other people, then some well-wisher may have broken the news to the family. And at that time, in the 70s, I remember there were lots of stories of elopings. You never hear that now. People actually used to elope. And there was, you would hear, oh, omuke na, omuke shange bhege geche. And so that was, that was a real scandal. Now you don't hear that. So there's that change. True. Definitely, there has been this change. Okay, next you're saying whether there has been a change in the relationship. There has to be a change. When you're in love, it's a sort of a, there's a lot of excitement. It's a different sort of thing. And when you're just, accepted and you're in a, you're a mother and a wife and, you have your roles and things, it's different. Definitely the relationship changes. When you cannot realize that there is this change, it is then when marriages start to crack, I think. When you suddenly realize that, oh, it was like this, why is it now like that? You just have to accept it as it comes. This is one thing.
Right.
Another thing I'd like to just touch on, what you were talking about before, roles. I somehow feel that children depend more on the mother. I just, mothers, Naveed might be, not agreeing with me, but I have a feeling that children open up more with their mother. I don't know why I find that. At least in my relationship, of course, my children are very, very close.
You're telling your story, so that's
yes, I'm telling
perfectly
my
fine.
story. But I have seen this in many families, and the way I, feel about my children is slightly different from the way Nizam feels about our children. Okay, so I do think that motherhood is slightly, more pressing towards a role with the children than, and so I like Zara, I also don't cook much. It's not that I can't cook, I can cook. My children used to love that I used to cook, 1 day a week. But I don't voluntarily cook. Nizam loves cooking. He voluntarily cooks. Mm-hmm. While we were in the beginning of our marriage, for the first 20 years, I'd say, I used to be I cooked. In England, I was the only one who did it. So, but once we came back to Bangladesh and Nizam was free from his PhD constraints, he loved cooking, and now he just does it. He, in fact, just before we started this talk, he and Kayan put some chicken onto the oven.
Nice.
Probably burning it now. But anyway, so that was that role. I think there's no role there, but motherhood, I think.
That's very interesting. You raise that because I want to take this question to you, Naveed Bhai. Mm-hmm. Just if you could quickly comment on it. When women talk about this whole working versus stay home, and when we in general talk about stay home moms or the role of being a mother, or exactly the same way Zebunanti said that it is supposed to be special, we tend to romanticize or glorify the role. It's a noble act to be able to sacrifice to a certain extent, or change your lifestyle around it and fully embrace the role of a parent for a woman is romanticized to a certain extent. But we don't very often hear a man's role, sitting at home, looking after children, being romanticized. To kora hoy na. I think in more cases, there is a bit of shame attached to it. There's always a follow-up question about, whether he's lazy or whether he lacks motivation or ambition. I just want to hear your thoughts on this, and if you've ever experienced questions or unsolicited, comments on your role.
No, I haven't faced any such questions, and I never had any complexes about this. It was a voluntary choice to quit my job and be home with my daughter the first 3 years of her life. So that means 24/7 I was with the child. So I think it was by far the most priceless experience for me. And nobody said anything. On the contrary, many people actually appreciated that. And I think I was able to, I don't want to sound cocky about it, right? I think I was able to influence many other people to say, hey, if Naveed can do it, we can do it. And actually
That is
just pride in doing it.
amazing.
Yeah, and I think that that was also another very rewarding thing. And the fact that those 3 years I was home, and I actually quit my job, and I was home, so there was literally no income for 3 years. We were just living off of our investments, and we made a decent. I think that was a smart thing, that we had this investment, we cashed out, so we burned that cash, which we could have saved for the future. But I look at it that that was a hands-on experience that I paid with those savings, so that I didn't have to work. We didn't have to worry about money for 3 years, which ran out after 3 years. But those 3 years I was home, and it was really, I actually went through the process that millions and billions of women go through around the world, where they have to make a conscious choice that I'm going to take a break from my career and what's going to happen after I come back. And so after 3 years of being home, completely, 24/7 looking after a child, I went through the process of all these women who go through. And then what happened after those 3 years, I was still, just a comedian and a stay-home dad. And then we just came to Bangladesh. I was still planning to doing comedy and everything. And then Nokia Siemens Networks approached me, and they said, we want to consider you as the chief executive officer of Nokia Siemens Networks. My predecessor had left, and he recommended me because he knew my credentials. And I said, look, I've been away from 3 years, yeah, sure, fine. And when I went and talked to them, I got the job. And after 2 years, when I left to join as the CEO of IBM, during my farewell, I remember one of my colleagues, and I always use the word colleagues. In Bangladesh, a lot of people like to use the word subordinate. I could be a CEO, but even the guy who makes tea, he's my colleague. And I remember one of the account managers stood up and he said, I've worked with CEOs, but with Naveed Bhai, I worked with a leader. And I can tell you one thing, that those 3 years when I was home, that built me to be a genuine CEO where I could inspire people, because I could understand people at work, why that person is cranky today, especially women. Why is she not performing right now? Because I raised a child and I knew what's postpartum depression. I raised a child for 3 years, and I know physically how demanding, while it's rewarding, how demanding this work is. So when she's tired at work, when she's maybe not quite performing, I could tell why. But at the same time, those 3 years at home raising a child actually trained me to be a lot more tolerant, to be able to multitask a lot. And so when I was a CEO, when you are actually faced with, making decisions, leading different personalities, different kinds of customers, you're actually in a better position. I think I was a better CEO because I was home with this child for 3 years. And I'll tell you this, another example, my friend who was Stephen, he was the ambassador of Sweden to Bangladesh, and we were very good friends, and he had a similar story. They also have 3 children, and he said, in Sweden, you can take 18 months off between the husband and the wife.
One.
Either way, yeah. And at least one of them has to take 12 months off. And he told me the same thing, Naveed, I'm a much better diplomat today because I was home for 12 months with that child. So what I say, that to summarize, no, nobody looked down at what I did. I never felt that I was doing something. I felt very confident. And trust me, when I took my little 1-year-old daughter in my red sports car to the beach in California when Zara was in Berkeley, and I had a wedding band in my hand. Trust me, I was not the most six-pack guy on the beach, but I could tell that I was one of the most attractive, well-shaped guy over there. He gets out of a sports car with a little daughter in his hands. So to me, it's actually, I tell a lot of men that it's actually very machoistic in a different way. Somebody told me, a very attractive actress recently told me that a dad like this is more attractive than a six-pack. And I can guarantee you, if you really want to massage your ego, this is the greatest way to do it. But coming back to that, no, nobody said, look down at this. I never felt bad. I felt very confident, assured of myself. And I can tell you, I was a better, look, from an engineer, I jumped to a CEO position. Yeah. I was never a VP or anything. And I think the only reason I was able to do that and execute those 2 jobs so well was because I was at home for 3 months. I mean, rather 3 years with a child. So now there are all these millions and billions of women who actually take time off of work. And I would say that if I had the opportunity, and which I did, that when a woman would come say, I took 2 years off, I'm behind. I said, no, you're actually behind. You've got that great experience, which we can use at work. You would not look down upon them. So not only not look down, but those people who are, they take time off from work to be home, they're actually much better positioned to get back into work as a much better contributor. So I think that's really the whole story.
I loved your air quotes, by the way, for actually explaining maternity or paternity leave. I love the fact that you use the air quotes, because you've obviously experienced it yourself, that it's definitely not in any way taking time off. It's actually, so it's amazing. And you've raised an amazing point in it, that there are actually skills, there are actually incentives to, sharing household duties, to actually being a more hands-on male member of the family. There are skills that you can adopt in there that you can go back to work and also apply. So yeah, I really sincerely hope the male members in our audience are, taking notes. I just want to go around the panel and go for closing comments, and also anything that you might want to add in terms of what you think about this amazing platform. Now that I do have an opportunity, I personally would love to thank her, Will, for allowing this platform that propagates these thoughts and, fantastic exchange of ideas and experiences. Yes, so just a very quick closing comment, since we're getting to the end of our show. Anything that you would like to say about our platform and, how you think you could be a valuable part of our mission? Zebunanti, I'll start off with you.
Firstly, I think that any initiative that looks at women's rights is really needed. We've come a long way. Definitely, we've come a long way since the Victorian ages, when women had no rights at all and everything. But there's a lot to be done. And when we go, especially in Bangladesh, if you look at the countryside, if you go to the rural areas, you'll find so much, the women are so deprived, and people are not taking care of them. They almost have no will of their own. Unless empowerment is coming, because as soon as they get the opportunity to earn some money, they get some independence, and it's good. But then again, without how to use this independence becomes, is also questioned and is also questionable. I would say that I wouldn't be very happy about the way some people use the independence, and also I wouldn't be happy about the way some people question the independence. Both things are have to be looked at, and I'm sure that this sort of effort will be helpful in eradicating a lot of the inequality between the men and the women, and in getting the men in line, I think, let's say, to have an equitable society, and so that and also to bring the children and in training the children to become better future leaders. That's also important.
Absolutely.
So that they don't repeat the same things that happened in society. So thank you very much for bringing me here, and I wish you all the luck. And if you need my help, if you need anything from me, please get in touch with me. I would love to help as much as I can.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
We're very, very, very grateful for that. Thank you so much, Zebunanti. I'll move along to you, Nizamanko. Any closing comments and anything you'd like to say about contributing to our platform, Her Will?
Yeah, everybody knows this, that education is very, very important, and I think the more girls, women, and ladies get education and get good jobs, I think there already is an impact in the society, and now women in Bangladesh are working in almost every field: army, navy, air force, medicine, architecture, engineering, you name it. Women are there. So in many ways, I tell you, when I was the vice chancellor at this BGM University, these people used to come from abroad and they used to talk about gender equality and the workplace harassment. I said, look here, in my university, every male, every female gets the equal salary. There's no differentiation between any worker because of being male or woman. So please try to improve your attitude towards women workers. Now,
absolutely.
Having said that, I mean, well, now Dipti as a mother takes all the pride about being the mother of the family, but I'm also the father of the family. Two incidents I must mention. Once my eldest son, now Dr. Rashid, when he was 6 years old, he broke his hand, and I was in my department, and he said he didn't allow anybody to touch him. The Baba ashte hobe. So that I still remember. Proud moment for me, and I still cherish that moment because he called me, I miss you, I cry in the toilet. So I immediately called my family and Dipti and all, said, please send him home. And you won't believe it, that 10-year-old made this journey from Dhaka to London all alone in a British Airways flight.
Oh my God.
And I received her at London Heathrow, and I kept we stayed together for 10 months. That's when I basically learned how to cook and wash and do everything. So I was also a single father for those 10 months, and I really enjoyed that. So
fantastic.
As I said, that every individual is unique, and we can learn from each other, but unless we do it ourselves, it will not happen.
That's amazing. Thank you.
And thank you for having me here. And if you see anybody giving a lady or a girl into forced marriage, please come to me. I am a very man.
Okay, we will. You're the feminist police from the male pack. That's amazing. Thank you so much. We're so very grateful for your presence and contribution tonight. Thank you, Ms. Amanko. Zarapu, any last comments and anything you'd like to say about Her Will as a platform and how you might be able to contribute towards it?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Naaz. It's been a pleasure being on this esteemed panel, I will say, having Nizam Bhai, Dipti Appa, Amader, they're like our idols as a couple and as a power couple, actually. And also being with Naveed on any show is always exciting. It's wonderful. I learn things. I learn things from him by the minute, I should say. And আমি যেটা বলতে পারি for Her Will. See, the thing is, it's economic to include women in employment. All right, it takes the country forward. Our major growth in Bangladesh happened with the RMG, right? All the foreign earnings came in with the ready-made garment industry, where 51%, or actually more than that, 65% of the employees are women. So it's economic. And it's good when you include women in any sort of economic activity. So why leave them out? And it is good for a home as well when there are two people earning instead of the earning being dependent on one particular person, right? It's security. It's security. It's just limiting risks, spreading risks. So আমি যেটা মনে করি হারওয়েলের উদ্যোগটা is fantastic. Of course আমি আমার যতদূর ক্যাপাসিটিতে আমি হারওয়েলকে হেল্প করব, আমি যাই করতে পারি থাকবো পাশে। অনেক ইনিশিয়ালি ছিলাম, আরো থাকবো। আর যারা যারা আছেন কাজ করতে চান, লিডারশিপে আসতে চান, যেটাই করতে চান, আপনাদেরকে মন স্থির করে এগিয়ে যেতে হবে। And you have to market what you need to do. You have to sell it to your immediate stakeholders first, and then you come out to the employment zone or to the industry, and then you prove yourself. Arekta jinish which is great about a woman working is jeta Navid bollen, jeta Nizam bhaiyo bollen is বাচ্চা দেখার সময় যে মাল্টিটাস্কিং ক্যাপাসিটিটা হয়, ইমোশনাল কোশেন্টের যে ডেভেলপমেন্ট গুলো হয়, সেটা কিন্তু অফিসে বসে ওভারনাইট হয় না। সো একটা বাচ্চার সাথে ডিল করতে গিয়ে একটা মহিলা যখন লিডারশিপ রোলে আসেন কিংবা একটা ম্যানেজারিয়াল রোলে আসেন, তখন তিনি বুঝেন যে বিভিন্ন ধরনের all children are different. Each and every child is different from the other. So when we're dealing with team members, we're not expecting the same thing from each team. So sorry, এটা লাস্টে এসে বলছি, but এটা কিন্তু একটা জিনিস যেটা মহিলাদের থাকে, ইমোশনাল কোশেন্টটা স্ট্রঙ্গার। সো আই থিঙ্ক দিস আর ভেরি গুড কোয়ালিটিস টু hone in on and work on and shine them further, because women in leadership ছাড়া আমাদের উপায় নাই। We need equal representation in every field, every sphere, and I will work till the very end to ensure that it happens and we can do it, inshallah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for all of that, Zarapu. Thank you for the wonderful insights as well about Bangladesh and the RMG sector. We're so grateful for your presence tonight. Navid Bhai, any last comments and anything about our platform, Her Will?
Yeah, just to summarize, I think one of the main issues we talked about today is that it takes two to tango anywhere in the world, in any situation, and most certainly when within the family as a couple. So I think that whole topic was reiterated. And as far as Her Will is concerned, you mentioned at the very beginning off camera is that you have your team of advisors around the world. Basically right now everybody's connected digitally who educate women, and I think educating the men is also part of the equation. So having said that, if there's any way I can help in that regard, just give me a shout.
Fantastic.
Time permitting, I'd be more than happy to. I'm not saying that I'm going to preach. I don't preach. At best, I can share my experiences. If that influences
Absolutely.
anybody to believe in this whole concept of it takes two to tango, I'd be more than happy to share my experiences.
Thank you so much, Navid Bhai. We're so very lucky and fortunate actually to have you. I can't speak for all of you here, but I have to say before we end this show that আমার মনে হলো কি একটা বিশাল রিউনিয়ন হলো আজকে, and একটা জমজমাট আড্ডা হয়ে গেল। This brings us to the end of another beautiful episode. Thank you so much for watching and being with us, and thank you so much for being with Her Will. Thank you and good night.